Hey, what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I am going to be sharing with you guys my most anticipated reads for 2023. So we are already a whole week into the new year, which is honestly kind of crazy. I feel like this first week just completely flew by for me. I don't know about anybody else, but today I'm going to be sharing, like I said, my books that I'm really excited for to release in 2023. If you guys hear any noise in the background, don't worry. My husband and the dog are both up here. They are moving some stuff around in my husband's space to make things really nice for him. So I'm going to go through these in no particular order. There are a few of them that have been released as of the new year because they came out within the first week of January, but the rest of them are still yet to be released. As I said, these are in no particular order, but the first one that we have is a book by Chloe Gong that's coming out in July, which is called Immortal Longing. I don't really know much about this, and I have not really read anything by Chloe Gong as of yet. However, the limited amount that I had read of these Violent Delights when I first tried to read it back in 2021 was amazing. I just never was able to finish it because when I had the book, it was a library copy, and then I couldn't finish it, and I just never got around to going back to it. So I do know, though, I really like her writing style, and I like this way that the story was developing, so I would be really excited to read her newest book coming out later this year. Next is Claire Legrand's newest book, which is coming out in May, which is called A Crown of Ivy and Glass. If you guys did not watch anything from 2022, or even my top rated books of 2022, you would know that her book that came out in 2022, which was called Extasia, was one of my favorite books of the entire year. It was in my top 5 favorite books, and I am so very excited because I love the way that Claire writes. I really liked the way that she created the world of Extasia, and I would be really interested to read her fantasy work, and I believe this is kind of something in fantasy. But I also want to go back and read her Furyborn series because I heard that was really, really good. So she's just kind of become an author that I'm really interested in and want to read more from. Next we have a book by Emily Wen Zhao, which this book has already been released as of January 3rd, and it is called Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. I have her other book, which is called Blood Heir, and I haven't read it as of yet, but I really like the premise of it, and I loved the premise of this book when I first heard about it, so I would be really excited to try to read this one this year. Next is a Roshani Chokshi book, which if you don't know, Roshani Chokshi is one of my favorite middle grade authors, and I have yet to read any of her more young adult or adult books, but I really like her writing. This is a book that comes out in February on Valentine's Day, and it is called The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I do remember her talking about writing this, I think a couple years ago. It was around the time I think she got married that she was talking about writing this book and how it was like a labor of love, and it really was a project of love for her. So I've been really excited for it since, and I can't wait for it to actually come out and be able to read it. Next is a book that I have not really heard much people talk about, but I did see Piera from Piera Ford talk about this on her channel as a book as to like why you need to read this book. And it is The Daughters of Ishidar by Hadir Elspai. I feel like I'm pronouncing that last name wrong. I apologize. But this is a book that actually comes out on January 10th. By the time this video goes out, I think it should be already out. But it sounds really good. It sounds like it's kind of like a high fantasy and daughters are involved where they're like vying for the throne, or at the very least maybe it's a revenge story. Again, I don't know too much about it, but it sounded really good. The next book is by an author that I read also in 2022 that I absolutely loved. It was in my top 5 or top 10, I can't quite remember, but it is You Don't Have a Shot by Raquel Marie. Ophelia, after all, was one of my favorite books of 2022. It really encapsulated, I think, the questioning aspect of people who are on the LGBTQ spectrum when they're really just finding out about their sexual identity. It really took that and made it something that was so beautifully done, and I can only describe it as somebody who has, you know, gone through the questioning phase. It just kind of hits all of the marks of the constant back and forth of whether or not you think you identify as one thing versus another, and then how do people perceive that, and how do you then perceive yourself based on those perceptions, and how difficult it is to maneuver that, especially when you're in high school. For a long time, you had thought that you were just, you know, straight for the longest time and everybody thought you were, and so then challenging that perception by challenging your own thoughts and your own feelings from before that you kind of are seeing come to the surface. It's just a very beautifully done book, and it really hits, I think, home for a lot of people. And so naturally, when I finished reading this, I got really excited for Raquel's next book, which is this one, You Don't Have a Shot, which I believe is supposed to be kind of thought about like almost, not She's the Man exactly, but it has the vibes of it because there's a competition involved and it involves soccer, and there's other things about it that I get very, very big She's the Man, Amanda Bynes vibes. Next is the book I think that will hit hard for a lot of people and comes out in April, which is called Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. I don't really know much about this, but I do think that if this is not at least fantasy, it plays on very hard-hitting topics. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this may have something to do with Native women going missing. I think it might be supposed to be a mystery thriller now that I think about it. I don't know whether or not it's fantasy, but I do remember seeing that there was a lot of stuff being talked about with this where it was going to probably be a very hard-hitting book in terms of talking about the fact that women who are Native that go missing, they're basically never heard of from again. And a lot of times they end up found dead, and also then in a lot of cases sexually assaulted. So this is probably going to be a really, really hard book to swallow in a lot of ways. But I think that this is going to be something too that is going to be really necessary in terms of bringing up the conversation of really advocating for Native women when they go missing and trying to find where they've gone. And unfortunately, they are a community that does not seem to get the recognition that they deserve when they go missing, and they honestly never get found because police forces don't take into account the fact that these women are just as important as any other white woman that there is in the world. Next is a book from an author that I have not seen in a while, but I'm kind of excited because I know that she had made a bit of a comeback with a book that she did a co-authoring with, but that is Wish of the Wicked by Danielle Paige. Now this one comes out not until November of 2023. I really enjoyed Danielle Paige's other series that came out when I was like in high school, and it was called the Dorothy Must Die series. It was a reimagining and kind of like expansion on the story of Wizard of Oz. It followed a girl who was not Dorothy that was traveling into Oz and finds out that the entirety of Oz was taken over by Dorothy at some point, and she's trying to basically fix things because everything's gone completely wrong. I don't think this is in any way involved with that series, but it is another fantasy that I would be interested in reading because while Danielle Paige's Wizard of Oz retelling series was not necessarily like top tier best thing there ever was in my opinion, I do think that she had a very engaging and very fun writing style that I think would be something I would continue to look into in the future. Next is a romance that I'm actually really excited about because it combines two of my favorite things within any book, which is anything to do with witches and something to do with demons. I don't know what it is, but I love demon books. I think that they're really, really fun. It is a romance by Sarah Hawley that is coming out in March, which is called A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon. I feel like that sums up the entire premise of the story, but it sounds really cute and really funny. Like, I am expecting a lot of witty banter going on in this, and I am also expecting it to be a very fun experience, if maybe not necessarily 100% smutty, but at the very least, I think I would get a really good laugh out of this book because I think it's going to be so much fun. Next is a book by Hafsa Faizal, which is coming out in September, which is called A Tempest of Tea. Now, I have not read Hafsa Faizal's duology of Hunt the Flame yet, or We Hunt the Flame, but I have heard nothing but good things about it, and it is one of those series I would like to try to start this year if I can, but at the very least, the premise of A Tempest of Tea sounds absolutely amazing. Another wonderful high fantasy kind of story that I'm always down for, and I'm very excited to try out this book. Next is a book by Anna Marie and Elliot McLemore, and it is very, very much anticipated because I love Anna Marie's writing, and I am so excited that they are co-authoring with their partner, and it is called Venom and Vow. Now, this is another fantasy that does deal with non-binary characters, very similar to what we've seen of Anna Marie McLemore's books in the past, but this one, like I said, is being co-authored with their partner, which is so exciting, and from what I understand in the process of writing this, it was very fun and helped them both really find a lot of things about themselves in the process of writing it, so I'm very excited to see how this this one turns out, and I think I'm gonna really enjoy it because I have massively enjoyed Anna Marie McLemore's writing in the past. Next is another kind of romance story, and I think it's going to be more of a YA or maybe NA or new adult kind of story, and that is called Always the Almost by Edward Underhill. I don't really know much about this other than the cover. It looked really cute and really fun, so I feel like though this is going to be kind of like similar to Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds, where it's going to be a very sweet and cute romantic story, but it's also going to have some really hard-hitting parts. So I'm curious to see how this one comes out, and this one also comes out on Valentine's Day, similar to Roshani Chokski's book. Next is, again, my most anticipated book of the entire year because it is by my most favorite author of all time, R.F. Kuang, the wonderful Rebecca Kuang, and it is Yellowface, and this comes out in May. Y'all know my most favorite book of 2022 was Babel. I was highly anticipating this book since I had even heard about her coming up with the idea of Babel back when The Dragon Republic was coming out in the Poppy War series. And when I first heard about this one, I was floored because I thought that this premise was going to end up being something incredibly controversial. But Babel was also supposed to be very controversial in a lot of ways, and it turned out so wonderfully. I don't know whether or not, though, this one's going to involve as many magical elements as Babel did. I would be really surprised if it didn't, but from what I understand, there's supposed to be some maybe small level of magic, but all I can really say about this one, from what I understand, is that this is basically talking about yellow journalism in a lot of ways, and it is specifically talking about racism when it comes to journalism, and specifically toward Asian communities. Because if y'all don't know, Rebecca really focuses a lot of her books on talking about racism toward Asian communities and the colonization of Asian communities in a lot of ways. And so I'm so excited for this. Y'all know this is probably going to be another very, very highly reviewed book by me. I feel like she can do no wrong, and I am just so excited for this one. The next book is another book by a very well-liked author that I actually had found in December of 2022, and was another author that had a book on my top 5 list, and that is Warrior Girl Unearthed by Angeline Boulley. I read her other book, Firekeeper's Daughter, in December, and I absolutely loved it. It was an amazing story for a lot of reasons, but namely because I got to learn a lot about my family's tribe that I descend from through this book. I never really learned a lot of traditional aspects in terms of superstitions or anything like that within my life because of the fact that my grandmother, who has family that is from the Chippewa or Anishinaabe tribe, is basically like non-existent. Her knowledge is completely non-existent. She didn't really get to learn much of it, and so therefore I did not get to learn much of it. But with The Firekeeper's Daughter, I really got to learn a lot more, and I loved the story so much. Warrior Girl Unearthed is actually, I think, a companion novel, if not a direct sequel, because I do believe it follows the same character, or at the very least somebody in her community if it's more of a companion novel. But I loved Angeline's writing in the first book. I really think this is going to turn out amazing, and I'm just very excited to see what else of the story there is to tell within this community and this story that there was, because I thought it wrapped up really nicely with The Firekeeper's Daughter, but obviously there's something else that needs to be told, and so I'm excited to see what that is. Next is another fantasy novel that I'm very excited for because this was by an author I did not expect to really enjoy as much, that I had read in the probably second half of 2022 if I'm not mistaken, but that is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. I had read M.L.'s other book, which was The Sword of Kaigen, and I really liked it a lot. I didn't necessarily give it a 5-star, but it was definitely a high 4-star book, and when I had read this, when it was for Brandy's book club, I think in August, we had talked about the fact that there was another book that ML was coming out with in 2023. This one in particular comes out in July, and I'm very excited for this because, again, I really like ML's writing. I do believe this is, again, similar to the Sword of Kaigen, going to be playing on an Asian-like world that is going to have some kind of possible science fiction elements involved in it as well, because that was what we saw with the Sword of Kaigen, and I think that I would be surprised if this did not have those similar elements. Next is a new installment in a series I'm so excited about because this was one of my first Finisher DNF series that I actually finished because it was so cute and so fun, and it is a historical romance series that has mystery thriller aspects, and it is the newest book in the Countess of Harley mysteries by Diane Freeman, and the next one is A Newlywed's Guide to Fortune and Murder. I'm so excited about this. I was so surprised to find out that there was going to be a 6th book when I finished the first 5 in this series for that Finisher DNF video back in 2022. And I can't wait because I love this story so much. I love the main characters so much, and I'm just so happy to have at least one more book in this series before it finally finishes out. Next is a book that actually was on my 2022 anticipated list, but ended up getting pushed back because of publisher issues, and that is Grady Hendrix's new book, which is called How to Sell a Haunted House. Now, I've yet to actually read a Grady Hendrix book, but I've heard really good things about him, and I just would like to be able to read his newest one before I go back and read some of his other ones because, you know, I feel like if I'm going to start with a new author, I kind of want to read the newest stuff before getting to the older stuff. The next book is another author that I've not read from anything as of yet, and I do believe this may be a debut book, and it is called The Next New Syrian Girl by Reem Sukairi. I do think this is more of a contemporary story and will be doing a lot of, again, hard-hitting elements in terms of talking about maybe the problems that are in Syria, as well as maybe talking about some of the political issues that there might be going on in terms of the rest of the world. And I don't really know much else about it other than I do think it's supposed to be kind of that contemporary, hard-hitting style. Next is a new book by an author I really seem to like in 2022, and that's Kalynn Bayron's new book, which is called My Dear Henry. I really liked Kalynn Bayron's Cinderella is Dead, and I think that this is going to be something I'm going to really enjoy too. Next is the new Talia Hibbert book, which I think has already been released as of now because it was supposed to come out on January 3rd, and it is called Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. I've yet to read a Talia Hibbert book, really, but I feel like she's going to be one of those romance authors I'm going to really enjoy, and I don't think that this one is going to be any different from that. So I'm just excited to kind of dive into Talia Hibbert and really see how her writing style is for me. Next, though, is a more established author in my repertoire, and that is Marie Lu's newest book, which is called Stars and Smoke. I do believe this is a brand new world. I really loved Marie Lu's Legend series, though. That was one of the first dystopian series I ever had gotten into when I was in high school, and so I've always really been drawn to her writing since then. I've yet to read really anything else by her because I've been stuck with reading other books and by other authors and stuff like that, but I would love to add to my Marie Lu collection, if nothing else. Next is Mindy McGinnis's new book that comes out in March, which is called A Long Stretch of Bad Days. Again, I don't really know anything about this other than it's gonna probably be a suspenseful, focusing on some kind of societal thing that Mindy McGinnis is very well known for, so always excited to try that stuff out. The final book that is on my most anticipated reads for 2023 list is Silvia Moreno Garcia's new book, which comes out in July, which is called Silver Nitrate. Now, I have only read one Silvia Moreno Garcia book as of yet, but I really like her writing style and would like to continue reading, so obviously this one's gonna go on there so I can continue to find more books by her, because I really enjoyed The Daughter of Dr. Moreau when I read it in 2022. So without further ado, those are all of the books that I had listed for my most anticipated reads for 2023. I'll leave all the information for these books down in the description, which will include their Goodreads profile, so you can go check out the descriptions of these books, as well as the release dates for these when they are coming out in 2023. When I got to read a lot of my 2022 anticipated releases, they all turned out to be pretty good, except for maybe one or two, but I think that this year will end up becoming kind of similar. I'm really hopeful for a lot of these books, but I know that there might be some duds here and there, and you know, it is what it is, but I'm just excited to see what these books end up doing, especially when all these later books end up coming out, because there's going to be some really good releases, I think, especially toward like the middle and to end of the year. So I'm just really excited. But if you have any other anticipated reads that are coming out in 2023 that you're excited for, let me know down in the comments, because I would really like to see more books get talked about that I might not have heard of. I just went through a ton of anticipated releases lists basically through Goodreads and just on Google, and found a ton that I really was excited about because I'd heard about them before, or they were by authors I really seemed to enjoy or was excited excited to read from in the future. So if you have any other suggestions, please feel free to let me know. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!